You might be shocked how getting back to basics can transform your art. And I have been shocked personally because I have been taking on a project lately that I really thought, frankly, was going to be really boring, but I knew I needed to do it, which is to create more beginner-friendly content. So as I've been painting in a more beginner-friendly way, I've had this amazing revelation, this huge surprise. It has transformed my work. It has made my work more delicate, more transparent, and it's been really exciting. And it's all because I got back to basics. Today, we're going to get back to basics on how to make marks with watercolor. And this is part 3 of a 4-part series that I'm doing called Watercolor Roadmap Back to Basics. But first, my name is Rachel Parker Varner, and I like to teach not just the how, but the why of watercolor so you progress on your watercolor journey a lot faster. And a lot of my tips are actually applicable to a lot of different mediums because I talk a lot about how to design paintings. So even if you use the most rudimentary techniques, if you use good design, you can make a beautiful painting. In the comments below, I will link a whole list of binge-worthy videos that have been really popular across a lot of different audiences. And I will also link in the comments some links to some of my favorite supplies that I talk about. At the end of this video, I will talk about my paid offerings and also how you can get more in-depth critiques. But for now, before we get started, let me mention one more thing, and it's probably the best thing I offer you all, and it's access to my communities for free. My communities are full of like-minded people, and some are really advanced, amazing artists that give such good advice. I learned so much from so many of my members, all the way down to super beginners. And you can share your work on my 3 free communities and get advice and feedback if you ask for it. If you don't ask for it, we'll just be supportive, and we are supportive and wonderful. There are 3 different places that you can upload your photos and read my comments. I was just looking at some of my online communities the other day, and I had a light bulb moment that I need to tell you guys how rich it is to go read the comments on all the posts in my communities. You will learn so much just in the comment section under each painting that my members upload. My 3 communities are these. One is Patreon that you can join for free, and that's kind of like joining my mailing list where you learn about my new tutorials, new aha moments, whenever I post a new free video, whenever I'm about to go live, etc., etc. You will get an email when you join my Patreon for free if you turn on those notifications. And when you join my Patreon for free, you can also upload your paintings in my chat section and get feedback, even if you're a free member. Also on my Facebook group, you can join for free and upload your photos there. If you're on Facebook, you might enjoy that. The 3rd place is new, and it's really exciting. It's right here on YouTube. You've got to be in the app, so it's not on desktop. It's when you're on a smart device in the app. You go to my community tab and you can upload your paintings there. So I check there every so often, and I comment on every single picture people upload to Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube. So it's a great way to stay in closer touch with me. And I love it. It's so fun to be a part of this amazing community of watercolor artists. And even if you're not a watercolor artist, like my mom is a colored pencil artist, we show each other our work all the time, and it doesn't matter what medium you use. Good design is good design no matter what medium you use. So come and join the fun. Be sure to stay tuned to the end, and I will explain my paid offerings. I've talked enough. Let's get into these watercolor mark making techniques. Here we go. All right, let's look at some basic watercolor techniques. We will start with what is probably the easiest one to do, wet on dry. It's called wet on dry because your paint, like it always is in watercolor, is wet and the paper is dry. So let's make some wet on dry marks. I'm going to get some cobalt blue. I'm going to add enough water to make it about milk consistency. Milk consistency will bead like that, but it will not run readily. That's about milk consistency. So remember, milk consistency gives you medium values. Tea consistency is light values. Cream consistency gives you darker values. So we're going to do just simply milk consistency on dry, wet on dry. I made a slow mark. What will happen if I change the orientation of my brush? What if I change it to almost completely flat? I'm going to pick up more. Dry brush effect. Now we have a dry brush look. This is what I've been doing my butterflies with, and they look so good. I love them. So those are wet on dry marks. This could also be considered a dry on dry or dry brush mark. Okay, so how about a wet on wet mark? Well, to do that, we've got to get our paper wet because it's wet paint on wet paper. So we're going to get an area wet. Okay. And in general, when you use wet and wet, you don't want puddles. You just want even moisture. Like that. And then we're going to paint into that with wet paint. And the wetter my paint is, the more it will bloom out. The wetter my paper, the more it will bloom out. So there's a mark. What if I add water to my brush? Make another mark. That's even softer and bloomier. What if I go in with really thick cream consistency paint onto this, now it's quickly starting to dry? I get a more controlled mark that's darker too. So this holds its shape better and it's darker because I used cream consistency paint on damp paper. What if we let this dry for 3 minutes? Let's let this dry. Let's let it soak into the paper and become buckling stage. In the meantime, I'll show you dry brush technique, which is also wet on dry. So I'm going to leave this paint in my brush and I'm just going to blot. I'm going to blot my brush. Now I've got a blotted out brush with cream consistency. I'm going to use my brush in this orientation instead of straight up and down. And it makes that texture, which is beautiful for fur. It's beautiful for a sparkling water effect. Great for brick textures, sand textures, any kind of texture, tree bark texture. And the more water you add to your brush, the less texture it'll be. So I'm going to dip my brush, give it a little blot, and do another one. So that's a little bit different look. What if I did it with a full sopping, dripping brush? I'm going to get the excess drip out and just go like that. So fast swishy motion with the side of your brush. So this is what beginners really need to do, is just sit with some cheap paper. You don't even need to use cotton paper. You can use your student grade paper like this and practice these brush marks and see what brush mark you get if you angle your brush like this as opposed to this, as opposed to this, right? Here's another fun thing. Oh, this is set up. Let's try again. Let's go in with cream consistency on half dry paper. Now it holds its shape even more. Okay, and because it's buckling, see if I push on it, it's buckled up a little because the water's starting to absorb into the paper. Buckling stage is when you can get cauliflower. So when you go in with too drippy of paint, let's get really tea consistency drippy paint and see what happens when we try to paint there. Usually it creates a cauliflower. Cobalt doesn't cauliflower as much and it's not doing much, but a lot of times you'll get a cauliflower. We're starting to get a cauliflower here. So I like cauliflowers. I think they're atmospheric, but if you're trying to paint something like a smooth child's face, you don't want cauliflowers. So you just need to be aware of the dangerous, sometimes buckling stage, which is when the water has absorbed into the paper, making it buckle. That's the dangerous time where you can get cauliflowers if you don't want them. Also, if you do want them, that's the time to get them.
Different paints cauliflower in different ways. Some paints barely cauliflower at all, for example, ultramarine blue. In my experience, it is hard to get ultramarine blue to get it to cauliflower. It will, but you have to get everything just right. You can look up how much paints cauliflower by going to handprint.com and going to his section on paint. There, he calls it blossom, not cauliflowering. So he judges hundreds and hundreds of paint for how much they cauliflower and a lot of other qualities of paint too. There are other paints that cauliflower in a very unique pattern too, namely Daniel Smith Lamp Black. To see my most spectacular results with this paint, be sure to check out my video about the chick painting I did, and I'll link it here. Daniel Smith Lamp Black furs out unlike any other paint I've used when you paint wet and wet with it. I painted the panda with this paint, and in fact, chose to paint this panda specifically to play with this property of Daniel Smith Lamp Black when it cauliflowers and when it's used in a wet and wet technique. Now, I love pandas, but sorry, it was all about the cauliflower when I chose this muse. Now, so very often in a real painting situation, you don't want to make these straightforward marks. You're going to have more complicated marks to make. So, for example, say you're painting something, you make a mark like that, but you want this edge, you don't want that hard edge. So what you do is while this is wet, clean out your brush, wring it out. Now it's a thirsty brush. And I like to start a little below and then work up to that edge, and that will blend it. Let's see if I can make it a mess. Let's see if I can make the mistake of not doing it right. All right, so there's my edge. I'm going to go in with a very drippy, not squeezed out brush, and I'm just going to go right into that edge. And we're going to let that dry, and you'll see what happens. It's starting to cauliflower already, which if you're painting fur, that's perfect. You want that effect. So it's just a matter of knowing what effect you want. If you're painting fur, say this side is the cat, and this side is the background behind the cat, this actually looks great. So it just depends on the effect you're trying to get. Say you hate what you just painted, and it's still wet. Oh, I hate this. It doesn't look right. You can blot it out. You can add water and blot it up. While it's still wet, you can do that. Ew, it looks bad. Now, this isn't the best paper, so it's not doing it perfectly, but I was able to blot up a lot of that, and you can see where the sizing is a little off, and it allowed me to blot here, but not here. That's because the sizing isn't even in this cheaper paper, so it makes it harder to blot up. Sizing is something they put on the paper so that the paint stays on top of the paper, where it will make the paint look brighter, and it will make the paint accessible to you to blot up and to fix. But if it soaks into the paper too much because of bad sizing, you won't be able to blot up, which I demonstrated in full effect on this very cheap Strathmore watercolor travel journal. I will say not all Strathmore paper is this crappy, but this particular paper is very bad. The sizing's bad, and the paint really soaked into the paper, and it just makes everything look so dull and blotchy. So this painting is the result of a badly sized paper. And you see the cauliflower that's happening there. So say your mark has completely dried and you want to lighten it. What then? Well, if your paper is tough enough, you can take a scrubber like this, dip it in water, and because I'm using decent paper with non-staining paint, which cobalt is very non-staining, I can go in and I can lift, blot, and look, I erased. Or maybe I needed to soften this edge. I softened an edge after the paint is dry. So you can fix your mark or soften it or do something to it to create a softer edge while it's wet. But if it dries too fast on you, you can still do the same effect with a scrubber. You can use a stiff or soft scrubber. I have a whole video about scrubbers. I can't live without my scrubbers. Okay, and then watercolor is transparent. So let's look. Very often, you want to let your layer dry and say you want to make a green looking area. Blue plus yellow makes green. So you can do optical mixing, which is your blue is dry, you paint another layer over that, and now in this part of the mark, it's going to look green leaning because yellow plus blue equals green. Okay, and I've got a great tutorial of an abstract painting where you can practice these layers of glazes and make a beautiful abstract painting. So, let's see what happens when we paint a red swish over that. See, because watercolor is transparent, you can see the layers below the top layer, and they affect each other, like painting with saran wrap. So what happens if we drop paint into this half-dry area? And cobalt blue and M-gram naphthol red mix so beautifully. But the cauliflower should form here. We'll see what happens. Those are some very basic things that you need to know to get started painting watercolor, the basic brush strokes, the basic ways to kind of manipulate them after you place the brush stroke. You might want to do something to them. A very common thing that I love to do is paint a large area of, say you make a mark of wet on dry. You can, if you want, you can add green next, and then maybe some yellow next, and paint them wet and wet next to each other. And it can really make a very pretty way to have the paint blend itself by, while it's still wet, painting the next color next to it.
One of my favorite techniques, and this is why probably I chose watercolor over acrylic painting, and specifically is because you can get the paper wet and you can drop in colors next to each other and they will blend and merge themselves. And if you tip up your painting surface and encourage them to blend and merge, they will blend and merge and dance together even more, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And I did a little bit of that kind of work in my newest free tutorial of a goose, where I got the goose wet everywhere that I wanted the paint to flow and then dropped in colors, very watery tea consistency colors, so it doesn't get heavy, and it's just a gorgeous effect. So be sure to check out that video, and you know it, I will link it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching part 3 of this 4-part series of this watercolor roadmap back to basics. In my session 4, which will be either this coming week or the week after that, depending on how much editing I end up having to do, it's not to be missed. I will talk about how you pull all this information together into creating a beautiful work of art, the importance of studies, how to develop your style, the correct mindset for being successful with art, and so much more. It's going to be a great session, so be sure not to miss part 4 of this 4-part series. And if you missed part 1 and 2, be sure to go brush up and check those out too. I will link all those in the comments below. Now, let's listen to a few weeks ago, Rachel explained my more in-depth Patreon paid offerings. Here we go. For those of you who are interested in knowing more about my paid tutorials, I'll tell you about my Patreon. What Patreon was designed to do by Patreon's founders was to give artists a place where they could get the support they need financially so they could do what they love to do. Especially in today's world of AI, I used to make most of my money on Etsy selling prints and art, but now Etsy and Facebook is deluged by artificial intelligence art that looks real. It's really convincing. So that means a lot less prints sell now, a lot less originals sell now, because there's so much more competition online these days, and it's getting harder and harder for an online artist, at least, to make a living. So Patreon, the founders of Patreon saw that trend happening to artists and wanted them to have something where their members, their followers, fans, what I don't feel comfortable calling my followers fans, it's my members, my not even students, because I learn from my students, but it's a place where you can financially support me. But as most Patreon content providers do, you get something back for your money, which is tutorials. You get access, in fact, to a library of almost 200 real-time, start-to-finish tutorials. Many of them are super in-depth, like what I explained with my sailboats, with extra demonstrations. They're at the level of a course, but for just a low $9 or $13 a month, you get access to almost 200. If you join for a year, you get 2 months free. You pay for 10 months and you get 2 months free. And you can send me through email a painting of yours and get a critique. And so if you join at the $30 tier, you get even more critiques. If you join at the $9 tier, you get like a little less critiques. So it just depends on your tier, and you just read through the different options and you'll see. But I would love for you to join a paid tier on my Patreon at patreon.com/RachelStudio. But at the very least, be sure to join as a free member so you just stay in touch with me. It's almost like being on my mailing list. I send out several emails a week of tips and what I'm painting and what I'm working on, what I'm excited about, what shows I'm entering and what you could enter if you're interested. Just fun art news, and we have a lot of fun. So I hope you'll join me there. But if not, at least be sure to join for free and join my Facebook group for free. And I hope to see a lot more of you online. Leave me a comment. Go binge a bunch of my other videos. I will leave a list of highly binge-worthy videos in the comments, and links to my supplies can be found at rachelstudio.com/supply list. And I also have some of my supplies in the description, along with tons of free tutorials, free things. Look through my description, look through my Patreon. It's like a watercolor playground in those places. So I hope you'll join me and come play. And until next time, go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.